We'll be talking today how academic activities has been transitioned online at Arizona State University. I have with me Masudul Hassan Quraishi, who graduated from the Department of Electrical and Electronic Engineering from Bangladesh University of Engineering and Technology. And then he joined his PhD program at Arizona State University. Hi, how are you?
Yes, I'm doing good. What about you?
Yeah, I'm fine here too. Many thanks for joining us today. I'd like to know your academic and research experience and all the measures at your Arizona State University. First of all, my question is, what are the major challenges that you are facing in this time?
Okay, so I think the first major challenge we all are facing is this transition to the online medium of teaching. So we have always been used to in-classroom teaching sessions. So when everything transitioned to Zoom, it was a new thing. And in my personal experience, I am more used to in-class teaching and I interact more with the instructor there. And when everything transitioned to Zoom, I was less interacting with the instructor in online class, like asking less questions. Also, when I know that the video recording will be available later, I kind of felt lazy to attend the class on time. So it's like the recordings were being piling up, and before the final exam, I have like 10 videos to watch because I felt lazy during the actual instruction time to watch those videos. So that was one thing. As a student, I felt that I was not attending classes regularly because the videos are available. And the second thing was I was interacting less with the instructors. I'm also working as a TA in my department, and that was another challenge to hold office hours in online. So in regular sessions, I would just go to the lab. The students are working there, and if they have questions, they can just show me their computer and I can just help them instantaneously. In online session, I think it's much more difficult to facilitate. Like I have a limited time slot and I can help one person at a time, and they have to share their screen, and it takes longer to help individual person. So I think in-person capability, I can help much more student in my office hour than the online version. So I can think of those challenges in my class and in my TA experience.
Responsibility of most graduate students to conduct or to serve the role of TA or the teaching assistants. Now,
Right.
speaking of which technologies or which softwares you are now using to not only to deliver the classes remotely, but as well as we also need to evaluate the students. So
Right.
If you can detail those phases briefly.
Yes, definitely. So for the office hours and the classes, we are using Zoom. So the whole university has transitioned to Zoom. So we are using that. For the evaluation, like the course I was in TA, it had lab experiments that actually requires in-person activities. Like they need to go to a lab, use their hardware FPGA boards to run their experiments on. So now we have all the labs closed. They cannot go to the lab and use the board. So it was a very difficult for us to evaluate those labs. So what we did, we had to like remove the hardware part from those experiments. They only submitted the simulation results and we evaluated them. So that was for the labs and homeworks. And it was very unfortunate because playing with the hardware is the fun part of the labs, right? So they are only submitting a simulation results and we are evaluating based on those. So we had to compromise on that part. In the project phase, like they had a final project, we couldn't like cut off the hardware part from that because it doesn't make sense to just remove the hardware part from the project. So what we did, we lent them some boards. We contacted the IT and the IT. So if each one person from each project group went to IT and picked up a board, and they could work on their hardware project at home. So that was one way of like evaluating the project. And for the exam part, that was the most challenging part, I think, to conduct the final exam. So we used the lockdown browser and Respondus Monitor, a tool, a third-party tool that ASU is affiliated with. Now, the challenge we face there is like, hey, I don't have webcam in my laptop, I cannot use the monitors. And hey, I use Linux operating system and it doesn't support your browser. So there were different queries from the students. So what we had to do, we had to make 3 different versions of the exam. First one, those who have webcam, they can use both the lockdown browser and the monitor. That was the easiest part. We just using tools. They're taking their exam using the monitor and we just evaluate them online. And the second one was those who don't have a webcam. So they are just using the browser and we are asking them to join a Zoom session from another device. So the monitoring part is done by me manually. Like they have their video on and I'm watching them taking the exam and then evaluate those. And the third one, those who have Linux and they don't support that browser, they had to just download the PDF exam, print it, and then join Zoom and work on that and send us back after scanning. So these are the three different versions of exam we created in the course that I was TA in to evaluate our final exam.
Uh-huh. So it's a lot more work for the TAs as compared to the regular time, right?
Yes, definitely. Because at regular time, I would just print out the exams, go to the exam hall and give them the exam. But here I had to make a detailed tutorial on how to use the lockdown browser. Like I had to, it took like me 2 or 3 days to gather resources on how to create a comprehensive guidebook for them so that they don't face any difficulty during the exam. Because it's a new technical thing for them as well, right? So when they're taking the final exam, if they face any difficulty, their exam can be ruined. So I had to make a detailed guideline for the lockdown browser and I had to create a practice exam so that they can practice beforehand and then come for the final exam. So it's definitely a lot more work for the TA and for the professors as well.
Yeah, and also it's not that much easier to grade the PDF scanned copy than to the
Exactly.
hard. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Grading hard copies are definitely easier. The online versions, it takes more time to evaluate them.
And since there are a lot more work for the TAs, has the TA work hours been re-evaluated or reassessed by the department?
Not really, because, and we also don't complain because in regular times, like when the final exam is not there, we are only conducting office hours and we are not, we are actually not working 20 hours each week throughout the semester. So it's okay to have some load during the final exam. So I think it's true for most of the courses. There was no adjustment for the TS.
Let's say some students are definitely at their final year and who are
Right.
about to graduate. Now, if they have some essential hardware labs, but they are not at this time, they are not able to participate in those labs. So what are the contingency plan of the university? Will they be able to graduate without having the real experience of conducting lab works, or they can just finish in this way?
So for ASU, I don't know if there is any plan right now, but if they have any hardware project, I think right now what they can do, if they have already registered for this course and it got affected this semester, they can take an incomplete grade, and when the university opens, they can conduct those experiments and convert that incomplete into a later grade. That's one approach that my professor offered. And another planning the university is doing is phased comeback. So they will assign time slots for students so that there is not much gathering inside the lab at the same time. So in that way, if they have essential hardware stuffs or their in-person part of their coursework or the experiment, they can come back to the lab in a phased return and finish their experiments.
Now I will have some questions on graduate research.
Sure.
So oftentimes there are numerical works, there are simulation works, but also experimental works are a major part of many graduate students' research. what are the plans or how the graduate research labs are adapted to this new situations?
So in my research labs, we have everything online. Like all other experiments are done on Linux servers, and basically all of us are working on coding stuffs right now. We have hardware stuffs that we need in-person activity for, but right now we have paused those parts. And if we need, we can call the IT and make necessary adjustment there, like set up some hardware for us so that we can pull data from here, something like that. So we can make those temporary adjustments. But for the graduate students whose work is entirely lab dependent, so they are the most sufferers in these situations because all labs are closed down and their experiments are literally just stopped right now. So, similar to what I answered previously, right now university is planning for a phased return for them. They can return to the university. They will be assigned time slot that you will be assigned a time slot to use the lab, and then finish the experiments they have remaining. Other than that, for this semester, for the spring semester, after the COVID-19 lockdown has begun, their experiments are basically stopped since then.
Uh-huh. And as you previously alluded to that, when you are listening to the online classes, it's less motivating. So
Right.
the same thing should be true for research activities as well, because when we go to the office days, we have a complete different experience or environment, right? So how you
Right.
adjust these research activities from home, that is the home office? Have you brought your some of the equipments or the workstations from your lab to your home, or any new measures?
Okay, so yeah, this is true for me. Like I love my lab space so much, and I spend more than 10 to 12 hours per day in the lab space. And the transition to home was really difficult for me because it's not the same. Like you are going to the lab and it has all this good setup for you, and working at home with your laptop is not the same. So in my case, the lab PC has remote access, so I can log in remotely and work from there. And I created a workspace in my home to work from that. Like I bought new monitor, keyboard, and mouse to attend a table to have a good setup, because previously I was totally dependent on my lab space for working. So when I transitioned to home, I had to buy some of the stuffs to create a workstation at home. And I didn't bring any equipment from the lab, but I can remote access my lab PC and work from there.
I won't take much of your time, but I cannot help asking this, that in the next fall or maybe this summer as well, many students from over the world, they were about to join ASU, definitely. So
Right.
what are the plans? Will they be able to join?
Okay, so first of all, some of the embassies are closed and they are not being able to get visa. So even though they have their enrollment letter or the immigration letter I-20, they probably won't be able to join in person. So what ASU is doing, they are making some of their courses online for them, like in fall. So for example, my PhD advisor, my professor was going to offer a course that was in person in fall, which was previously planned as in person. But that is a very fundamental and important course for all the computer engineering students coming from overseas as well. So he is offering it as online now, so that the students coming from overseas, they can, if they are not getting visa, they can join that online and at least make some progress in their coursework in their PhD or master's program. So in the case they are not being able to get visa and come in person to US, they can still register for some online courses and make some progress towards their degree program.
So basically, if the courses are offered online, it doesn't make much difference whether you are at Arizona or at Dhaka, right?
Right.
But one thing here, that graduate students, as we all know, that they are also being paid by the department or the university.
Right.
So what will be the payment accommodations for those students who cannot join but who will maybe take the courses from online?
Right. So graduate students, basically they are paid for either teaching assistantship or for some research they are doing with their professor. So that needs to be transitioned to online as well. So they will be online TAs. They will be holding office hours and helping the professor with grading and stuffs online. But yeah, that requires like whenever a new graduate students come to the university, there are TA trainings, right? So this year probably they will transition to online as well. So there will be online TA trainings and they will work online on the TA works. Same goes for the research work. So if their position, their research work allows online work, they can do some research online with their professor and get paid for that.
Mm-hmm. I guess only complexity here is that for being paid, you need your banking information, for which you
Right.
need also the immigration documents, all those things.
Right.
That
Yeah.
might be a challenge for receiving the payments from home, or maybe
Exactly.
they can
Yeah.
draw the
So
exact salary when they join in, right?
yes, right. So they need to have, like, for in US you need social security
Uh-huh.
stuffs to get payment. So what the university can do, they can have this payment pending, and when they join, they can deposit those. Yeah, that's a good point. That would be a challenge.
My final question to you is how responsive you find your university, or how do you feel that the university care for the graduate students, the international students, and overall for the students?
Okay, so for ASU, they have been very responsive to the situation. Like they quickly transitioned to online. They even created a separate portal for external learning. So in those cases, they have very responded very fast, and they care about the academic part of the transition definitely. But I'm not sure if uh, they are more responsive to the personal challenges that graduate students face, uh, like in some of the universities they are already cutting pay or reducing the number of TA positions, and I know that they have limitations too. Like if they're transitioning to online, their enrollment has dropped and their earning has dropped also, so they cannot pay the stuffs as before. But regarding to the empathy of the workers or the graduate students, I haven't found ASU much responsive yet.
That everyone is passing very tough situation
Right.
at this time, and things will get better soon.
Yeah,
Hope
hopefully.
for that. Thank you very much for joining us today. It was a
Yeah,
pleasure
sure.
to hear.
Yeah, glad I could help.